Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Lizard Brains podcast. I'm your host, DJ Alessandrini, and I'm joined by my co-host, Tom O'Gorman. Tom, how are we doing today?
I'm all right. I'm a little, I feel kind of weird today. I don't know why.
For real, or is
Not
this
in like
bit?
I'm weird. Like I just feel a little weird, you know?
What?
Like maybe it's my post-race hangover still.
Okay.
How are you feeling?
I wasn't sure if it was a bit. You're going to be like, I don't
No,
know, I'm
no,
feeling kind of weird, like my feet are soggy or something, or
no.
I
I'm
thought
done
you were
now.
making a iRacing got rain joke or something.
Guys, we got to get this out of the way right away. DJ's got iRacing rain on his brain because we did not get to play iRacing, which has rain in it now, and I don't think he's going to function very well during this podcast because we
No.
haven't played it yet.
This is going to be a 20-minute episode, rapid fire. Tom, all right. How was your weekend?
Dude, it was great. How was yours?
Dude, it's fun. Drove a car, drove a bunch of other cars. I borrowed Peter's car for time trial at VIR with the SCCA. Tom won a bunch of races.
Wait. No, I wanted you to. I wanted you to do the bit. Just like, yeah, it was good. Emails. Everyone's good. All right. I love your hair. Hope you win. Done.
Love your hair. Hope you win, everyone.
Yep. And episode out.
Yep. All right. What would that be? That would be a minute 42. Let's do it.
Yeah. Oh man. No, I'm good. How are you?
I'm okay. I'm a little tired. I stayed up late last night to try to get. I'm borrowing a car owned by Peter Schnorr. It's the car that I did SSC in all last year. I'm borrowing it for VIR. When we went to VIR last year for the SCCA time trials, we were both like, yeah, we're coming back, but this time we're not gonna have mechanical issues. Fingers crossed. And we're gonna reconquer this event. But Peter was too busy this time around. So Peter generously has loaned me the car to go compete this weekend, which will be fun. But I just I wanted to go through the car, and just because it's it's kind of sad all winter. So I went through the car last night. So I stayed up too late doing that. So now I'm tired.
What were you doing?
I was swapping over to like track pads and then the rotors that came with them, and just kind of did like a nut and bolt and everything. We were hearing a click on the front right, so I investigated what was going on with that. The car made less power on the dyno. Peter and another SSC driver, Chip Manuel. I always mess up Chip's last name, and I feel bad.
He's here. He can type it phonetically. Chip, in the live chat, type it phonetically.
Yes, please.
Once and for all, we'll settle the debate.
Apparently Chip's car is a cheater car, and Peter's car is probably normal.
Right.
Yeah. Oh, also, we found out, this is wild. We found out that hold on.
Uh-oh. Do I need to fill time?
We found.
Okay, he's back.
Yep, I'm back. We found out that this actually makes more horsepower, like a noticeable amount on the dyno. It's a K&N air filter. It actually makes more power. So here it is. I bought one for VIR.
Are we sponsored?
We are now. K&N, your official air filter of the Lizard Brains podcast.
No, the official air sponsor, or the official airflow sponsor of SSC.
Yeah, the unofficial but official air filter of SSC. But anyway, so we threw Peter's car in the dyno. It was a hub dyno, so it's going to be a little higher numbers than if you were on like a roller dyno. Ivan, I heard oiling makes it slower, so absolutely not. Talking about oiling the air filter. Oh, Chip, we're talking about, to catch you up real quick.
Are you just talking to the live chat this episode?
Yeah, that's all I'm doing. Yeah.
Okay.
Because that's going to make the quickest episode to get to iRacing rank.
Right.
Yeah. I could tell Tom's annoyed with me today.
I could tell you're not focused in even the slightest.
Dude, this is DJ 5 hours of sleep. Let's go. So we put the cars on the dyno, and Chip's car dynoed 172. And then Peter's car dynoed 165, which is like a pretty big difference, I would say.
Yeah.
And then we were like kind of talking about it, and we found out that Chip had one of them hot performance air filters brought to you by K&N Air Filters, the official air filter of the Lizard Brains podcast. So we threw it on Peter's car and we were like, well, let's see what happens. So we did 3 more pulls with it on Peter's car, and it made 167. So it was 2 horsepower, and each dyno pull was like exactly the same as the last one. Like there was the line just exactly followed the last line. Like every wave and like modulation as like like as the resonance of the intakes and all that stuff changed. It literally went
Yeah.
exactly. All 3 poles was 2 horsepower higher, with this type of air filter in it compared to just like the OEM replacement air filter.
So you remember how Peter was like weirdly the fastest person accelerating at SSE last year? When you combine him with this K&N air filter, he's going to be unstoppable.
Oh, dude, SSC, FRS straight to B Street. Absolutely.
Yeah. Only Peter though.
Only
Just Peter.
Yeah, only Peter accelerating.
Yeah. Wait, so you didn't tell everybody where you were and why you were on a dyno and all that stuff. You autocross this weekend. Guys, we both drove cars this weekend. For the first time in 2024.
Tom drove significantly more time in a car, but I went to a test and tune. I probably did like 20 autocross runs. Great way to knock off some rust. It was a test.
It was a test and tune?
Yeah, dude. It was like,
I didn't know that.
It was like hot lapping cars. And dude, I'm gonna have to say, I might be calling it a little early, but I think all my iRacing grind this winter of like trying to find time and like really trying to fine tune my driving, I felt so accurate in the car. I felt like super, like my inputs felt like they had like a ton of resolution, and I felt like I was just placing the car like exactly where I wanted. And I was like super in tune with it. And normally I don't feel like that in the beginning of the season. Normally it's like I feel kind of like awkward. And I bet the driving a Cayman GT4 at CMP like 2 weekends ago, that definitely helped with that. But yeah, I just felt like lights out. Like by the 3rd run, it was like, yep, that one would have won an event. Like that's how good that run felt.
That one won nationals.
That one would have won nationals. That's honestly though, that's how good it felt. Like the runs that I was like putting together. Like my vision was good. Like normally in the beginning of the season, like my vision sucks and my input, and I'm a little herky jerky on the wheel, and it's just like it just felt like it was one input for everything. I ended up exactly where I wanted, and the car was like balancing, like floating everywhere, and it felt like super good, and it didn't feel super difficult. It felt like I could do that run over and over and over again, and I did. I couldn't beat whatever my 3rd or 4th run was. I just like set that time over and over and over again. So yeah, I felt like really, really dialed, and it was literally my first time autocrossing for the year. So I feel, fingers crossed, but I feel like I'm gonna have like some really strong performances this year in all the things. So we'll see.
That's awesome. That's super cool. Yeah, I feel like you've always said you're slow to shake off rust, or you get extra rusty compared to other people.
Yeah,
so if you're starting this strong,
I'm highly corrosive.
Is this also the shortest off season you've ever had? Do you think? Have you ever thought about that?
Maybe just because
we were autocrossing into like November last year, dude.
Yeah, we were. I didn't think about that. Yeah, that might have something to do with it as well. Definitely. And then also like going to drive Peter's car in February. So like really like 3-month off season where I didn't drive a car. I forgot that we were autocrossing so late. I forgot about the Akron events.
You know what it was? It was probably that seat time in the BRZ.
Maybe, but I was really shaken after I spun your car and I took your car on a giant safari. I was like, you know what? Yeah. I'm just gonna do laps and not try to chase any lap times. And I think how much you destroyed me completely showed that.
Speaking of the rain, no, that's cool.
Did it
Dude,
rain?
I got to drive in the rain this weekend.
I was gonna say, did it rain? Is that why you guys won? Because you guys were kind of the underdogs this weekend, right?
Yeah. So I was at Barber for the WRL race. And I know I keep saying it on the podcast. I still can't 100% say what my thing for the year is, but this was supposed to start it and we were a little behind, but we still went. We went with Rockwell Autosport and we were in are Champ Car Boxsters, which are like 1997 Porsche Boxsters, prep for Champ Car. And so me and Eric Rockwell and Ryan Power, we're gonna race together. And let's see, where do I start? So it was an 8-hour race, 8-hour race Saturday, 7-hour race Sunday, and then for WRL they always do qualifying on Friday. So Friday is like 6 40-minute long sessions. So that's what, like three some hours or something. And your team's fastest time at the end of that day is the one that you qualify with. And that was the day that was wet. So it was basically like and then it was supposed to be dry Saturday and Sunday. So qualifying like kind of doesn't matter for an 8-hour race as it is. And then it was raining all day, and we didn't have rain tires because it wasn't supposed to rain, and we weren't supposed to be driving this car, which I'll get to someday. So we had this car without rain tires, and it was like the least fun I've ever had driving on a wet racetrack, because I've already been at Barber in the wet. I kind of know what to do. I already know what to do. And it's a qualifying for a race that like doesn't really need qualifying. We don't have rain tires. So I'm just like, when I went out for the first time, I'm like hydroplaning. It's like heavy rain. I'm like hydroplaning down straightaways at 70 miles an hour, like scared, because it was way too much rain for RE71 RSs or like any dry tire. I was driving around like, this is not actually that fun. I kind of had a little flashback of like what other people probably experienced their first time or early on in their like driving comfort with rain driving. It's like, okay, this day can be done whenever.
So wait, so it was raining really hard then?
It was, for the time that I went out, it was raining really hard.
Gotcha.
Yeah. I went back out later and it was a little bit better. I was trying to qualify better, but the car that qualified on pole, I couldn't get within like 4 seconds of it, because I'm assuming they had like Continentals or some sort of like proper 300 treadwear rain tire on.
Yeah.
And I just couldn't do anything with it. But like you said, we were kind of the underdogs. So we get into the race, and the Saturday, Ryan wanted to start because Ryan has a foot injury and a shoulder injury that he was worried about driver changes with and stuff. So he was going to start, and then in the first stint, the car that was in the fastest car in our class, we were in GP2, which is kind of like it's slower than GLTC, but not by a whole lot. It's like a couple seconds slower than GLTC. They were 3 seconds faster than our fastest lap in the race by the end of the race. So like all drivers had driven anything, like they were way faster. And by the time it was raining at the start of that race, it started to dry out, whatever. Long story short, we were like 5 laps down when Ryan got out of the car. And it wasn't because Ryan was doing a bad job. It was like he was doing the best that he could with what we had. And we were doing the best we could with everything we had. And that other team was doing a really good job with what they had. And we're like, all right, well, this is what we expected. We have a champ car in a WRL race that's not prepped for WRL. And we're 5 laps down already with 3 hours in of an 8-hour race. Then I get in with the theory that if I need to get in at the very end, I wouldn't maximize out my drive time. You can only drive 3 hours at a time. So I got in, and I don't really know how it happened, but it was dry, and I was just like running the car. And when I got out after 3 hours, we were on the lead lap. So the best I can figure is the other team
still in
had
second?
one fast guy. Huh?
But still in like second?
We were still in second. Yeah. So what I realized, I guess, over the time is like the other team must have had like a broad scope of drivers, and we were like all basically able to run the same within a second and a half or so with Ryan, Eric, and I. Then Eric got in, and we had this like series of events happen where we like had some miscommunications on pit stops and stuff, and it kept like taking us from right in the lead by like 20 seconds to like down by 20 seconds. And we kept like making little mistakes that would cost us like a minute here and there and here and there. And we're like, oh my God, can we just like get back in our rhythm? Okay, then we got back in our rhythm, and Eric's in the car, and he ended up running down the other car that had basically destroyed their left front tire. They were running Yokohamas. They had destroyed their left front tire, and they had to like limp home, and Eric ran them down and passed them, and we won in like the last 20 minutes of the race. We're like, this is not how that was supposed to go. We were 5 laps down 5 hours ago. How did this happen? But it was awesome. So then the second day, we were at, like I said, Barber, and they require like an hour quiet break in the middle of the day. So Ryan started again.
Do they do that in the middle of the race?
Yeah. So we literally have to do like from 8 to 11, we race. They go full course yellow at like 10:50. We bring everybody in, they stop everyone on pit lane, and everyone gets out of the car for an hour, and then everyone gets back in the car at noon, and we start back up.
That's so wild. Just
for church. Yeah.
Hey, everyone knows Jesus hates race cars, Tom.
He must, yeah.
Yep.
I don't remember that part of the Bible in Catholic school, but
It
Maybe I
was
was asleep that day.
it's the New Testament.
It's Leviticus 27, 80, 82, or I don't know. Yeah, so Ryan does his first 3 hours, and for a guy that like he basically couldn't walk like a month ago with this injury for his foot and his shoulder and a little bit of his leg, and then he like did back-to-back days of 3 hour endurance race stints. I felt kind of bad that we like threw him in the deep end with this thing,
Yeah, you're like, "We
but he
need
killed
you."
it.
Yeah.
And then the second day, we were 2 laps down by the time he got out because they had started their fast driver again. And then we had the little break, and then we start up again. And Eric got in, and Eric did a pretty short stint. I think he only drove like 50 minutes, 55 minutes. And then I got in. I was going to do the last 3 hours. And we were like basically caught back up to the lead lap by the time things had cycled out for maybe halfway through the race total. Then we took the lead, and I'm like running in the lead maybe a minute ahead of them on the same lap for like 2 hours probably. It was like a long time we were in that same formation. But they told me like save the tires because we'd pretty much beat the crap out of the tires the day before, and it had been raining for like 2 hours
Oh,
or
yeah,
like
yeah.
damp for 2 hours. So we're like, okay, 7 hour race, we probably got to take care of them. And then they kept telling me like it's gonna 57-second gap, 52-second gap. Like they're slowly catching me little by little, and then I would like make up a little bit in traffic, and
Oh,
it was like ebbing and flowing.
They were catching you.
They were catching me, and I
Yeah.
could like see them across the track because you know how
Yeah,
Barber's
yeah,
like got
yeah.
elevation and
So
stuff.
you
So
go
I
down
can
the
like
front straight.
I
and
can
you'd look,
see what's
You
happening.
would look to the right, and you're like, "Yep, they're a little farther up that section than I am."
Yeah.
Yep.
And then with like 15 minutes to go, basically at this point, they're not going to catch me unless the car breaks. And it starts making like the most horrible wheel bearing noise right at 92 miles an hour for the last 15 minutes of the race. And it's like one of those just like super anxious, like, please make it, please make it, please make it kind of things.
Yeah.
And it did. And we won the second day too. So we took Champ Cars to a WRL race that we weren't supposed to race these at and won both days,
That's
which was like super awesome.
Yeah, that's that had to be actually kind of exciting because it just happened like it wasn't expected. So like it's even more exciting when that happens.
Right.
So cool. You learned
But
anything?
I'm trying to think. I kind of started by knowing I didn't really have any big takeaways from the weekend other than that it was fun.
Well, that's good enough.
But like I didn't really learn it. Oh, I did have a story though, I guess kind of. I guess I sort of learned something. I drove the middle stint, the middle 3 hours on Saturday. And I don't think I've ever done the middle stint of a WRL race. I've either started or finished. And I think what happens is people start and finish their better drivers, best drivers.
Normally.
And the middle is usually when the people who are less experienced tend to be in the car. And dude, the on track during the middle of that race was wild. Like I felt like I was so I caught myself. This was my takeaway. Like I was on the track with probably the worst behaved set of drivers on the day. I feel from what I saw, and especially compared to the end of the second day race, it was like night and day, like totally different things. And it was just this frantic, like basically people seemed like they were like hitting each other with sticks like harder and harder, and it just kept escalating and escalating and escalating. So like by the time everyone would like finish their stint, they'd get out of the car and they'd be freaking out. And then like the energy was just very frantic on track, and there was so much contact and so much like cars going off and spinning, and like it just felt crazy.
Chaos.
But I remember like controlled chaos. It didn't feel dangerous, but you could just feel like the tense energy from all the cars on track. Okay, 50% of the cars on track, let's say. And it was fun to watch through the windshield. Like you could see it unfolding, and it was like, we're in one of the slower cars. I can kind of take my time, sort of. I can pick and choose. I know how to manage this stuff. But then every once in a while, I'd catch myself getting like reeled into it a little bit, and I'm like, oh, no, don't let that happen.
You would get
stay out of it.
Reeled into the chaos
a little bit, because you're like people just like side by side racing into braking zones for no reason when it's easier to just lift halfway down the straightaway and then follow single file, or like forcing issues that don't need to be forced in an 8-hour race when you're on hour 3.5.
Yeah,
that kind of stuff. So I had a good time both watching and sort of giggling at some of the behavior. We have a live stream of the whole race that I'm going to pull clips from, because some of the stuff is like, I don't like to laugh at people, and I'm not trying to laugh at people's driving, but the scenarios were entertaining for sure.
Are you going to play the Benny
couple
Hill
of times
theme?
that I like, Maybe. Have you ever seen this guy? There's like a guy that makes like reaction to construction videos, and he's like in his little hard hat, and like he'll show a clip of like a bulldozer falling off a cliff, and he's like, "Ooh." And then he looks over here, and he's like a guy like riding a jackhammer across the ground. And he's like,
Your
you know what I'm talking about?
No, your algorithm's different than mine, dude.
Okay. I get these videos every once in a while, and I kind of want to like film myself in my helmet in my little sim rig here, like reacting, and then
That'd be
cut in
so
clips of this race.
funny. Oh my god. You're just like, "Ooh."
Yeah,
And then it cuts to the next clip. I love that.
right.
But okay,
But
that's hard because it's like you're kind of like poking at other people's misfortune because a lot of times that ends up with like a crash car. So it's like,
I didn't see, unfortunately, I only saw one like actual contact, and it was a car that was, in my opinion, actually dangerous that hit the ASM S2000 when Aaron Lichty was driving. So like I had to watch that happen. I was like, that sucks. And luckily the S2000 was fine. They got it back out pretty quick. But everything else is just kind of amusing. So I think it'll come off fine. Like
okay,
I
all right.
said, I don't like I don't want to like giggle at people who are less experienced or something, like make anybody feel bad. But it is amusing to kind of watch
I
like
mean,
some of these scenarios play out.
I also find it amusing, but I wonder, yeah, I wonder what uh the perception of that is. Like and honestly, listeners of the podcast, like please let us know. Like would that be entertaining for you? Like I'm thinking of those Spec Miata drama videos. Oh, is that the guy? That's the perfect face for like whatever you just explained. Somebody posted a picture of the construction guy in the chat.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, we're like podcast listeners, please let us know. Like, would that be something that's entertaining, or do you think like it might come off as like insensitive or something like that? Because it's really just in the fun of like racing is entertaining in like both like when cars are side by side for an entire lap and they're inches apart, or when like something kind of goofy and like some booger moments happen and stuff like that. Like
Yeah.
like it's racing in all forms is like good fun. It's kind of like watching like little league baseball and like they run the wrong way around the bases and you're like, this is fun. Come on.
Right. Like I don't want to bully children, but also it's really funny to watch them play sports badly.
Yeah.
This isn't exactly that, but it's kind of fun, you know. I
It's
don't
just
know.
fun.
In
I
the
don't
same
know.
way, dude, like I've posted some videos of me driving like an idiot every once in a while. Like, do you remember me almost crashing at NCM when I like misjudged my run behind Jeremy and then I'm like randomly sliding out to the wall? I'm like,
You
what the hell?
yeah,
I
you
did
like caught it and then you thought it was good and then you brought the wheel back and then you're like, "Oh wait, no, we're still crashing." Caught it
I'm
again.
still yeah. I can't think of a specific goofy scenario I saw, but maybe I'll go back through the race and be like, oh, it wasn't as crazy as I remember.
That's always how
But
it ends up.
I do remember having to remind myself to like stay out of it because it was really easy to get involved with, especially at Barber. Like, if you haven't been to Barber, it's probably one of the least horsepower driven tracks that you can go to. It's like very momentum driven. You're probably in corners like 60-70% of the lap. And you're in corners for a long time when you're in them. It's not like NCM where things link together, or even Road Atlanta where you're like winding. It's like you're just in long sweepers for a long time. So GP2 cars on Bridgestones like ours are not actually that much slower for like 60% of the lap versus like a GT4 car. So you get a person who's less experienced in a GT4 car versus me, who's like all of a sudden I become a butthead and I try to race him into a corner. Then we're both just like hemorrhaging time.
Yeah.
So it was interesting for sure. Yeah. Okay. Ron in the live chat advised that I include some of my own amusing moments. I will do that.
Yeah,
That's a
and
good
I
way to
think
balance it
I
out.
think if you put in like captions or something like what was I thinking or something stuff like that, like where you could poke fun at other people as long as like you're also poking fun at yourself. I think that might be like a good approach to it. Unless you
Yep.
drove perfect, and then it's like, well, crap, guys, I don't know what to pick from this. I mean, it's hard to find mistakes. Like, maybe I could have tied my left shoe a little bit better, but like besides that, I don't
Yeah.
know. I don't know what I could have done different.
No, I had a couple of misjudged moments for sure. I mean, you're in the car for 3 hours, it's obviously, but I did have. I don't know. Can I bring up that like the thing I texted you about real quick? The semi topic.
Hold on, I'm drawing a blank. Let me. Facebook died for
It's
me.
what I'm. No. So it's basically I was thinking about this a lot as I'm watching this happen. There's two things I was thinking about. So one of them is in WRL. because it's a team event, but it's so many cars and it's so many different people, and it's not like GLTC where everybody knows each other. It's like a little more individualized than that because there's so many people. So like I could post a video of somebody doing something that I thought was goofy, and I have literally no idea who they are. They have no idea who I might be, and then they find this video of like I don't really know. So someone brought up a good point that like WRL could have these amateur endurance events should have some sort of like driver ID so people know who each other are, so that you can also like enjoy the race with people. Like if you have a really good battle with somebody, you just know the car, you have no idea who was in it, you don't know at what
Dude,
point.
honestly though, like, okay, that's a pretty good idea because there's been endurance races that I've done where I'm like, dude, me and that guy were having like so much fun. It was such a good back and forth. Like I actually got to do, because a lot of times in these endurance races you're just like managing traffic, but every once in a while a race will break out and it's like a really good time. I I think I have like a 30% success rate at finding that person and doing car hands in the paddock after something like that. You know what I mean? Like you don't
Yeah.
sometimes you never find that person, and I would like to assume they were also having fun.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
um, but I remember I did a lemons race at Gingerman, and I was in like this. It was a Subaru like Forester, but it was like basically like a WRX with a naturally aspirated engine. And there was somebody in a Taurus show that was way faster in the straightaways, but like a lot slower in the corners. And we had like the best back and forth. Like I would get by him, but then we'd come out of like turn 10 and then we'd be on the back straight and he would get by me and I would like cover the inside, hoping that like maybe I would have overlap by the time we got to the braking, but I didn't. So then we'd have to like have that fight all over again. And it was just like, it was a fun puzzle to figure out. And then when I finally, I got by him and then some traffic like split us up and then I was able to run away. Uh,
Yeah.
but in that, those 15, 20 minutes that we kind of had that like back and forth, like that was the most fun of the weekend by far. And actually ended up, I found that car in paddock and was like, hey, did anybody talk about racing the Funyuns uh, Subaru without the hatch on the back? And he's like, oh yeah, Jerry was talking about it. And so it was like, and then I got to talk, I don't remember if his name was Jerry or not, but, and then, so I got to do, hand cars with Jerry talking about us, like our mingle. Yeah. Mingling back and forth. And yeah, it was like super fun because it like racing's really fun, but then like reliving it is like almost as fun. You get to do it again.
Totally. I had that exact thing happen this weekend with there was a Mustang that was in GP1, so it was a faster car. But I never went and found him, which I should have. But I also, best I could guess, it was missing either third or fourth gear because I could hear it like it would be faster than me in a straight, and then it would like drop into like idle, and then it would be like basically the same speed as me in the straight. Yeah, and I think they were running worse tires, so I was faster in the corners, and I was faster. No, I was as fast once they got into their like overdrive gear, and I had this awesome like run with them. And there were times where we were kind of tripping over each other, and it got a little awkward. But in general, we had like a good probably 20 minute run together until something happened that we got separated. I think I might have gotten around during like GT4 cars or something. But yeah, I'm like, it'd be kind of fun to know who that was and like find him or something. But otherwise, you just have to be like, hey, who was in the car like 3 hours into the race? Oh, yeah, it was Jerry.
Yeah, Jerry's in all the cars. Hell of a driver.
But
You know what would be kind of cool? I just had an idea. And somebody
yeah,
turned this into a thing. You could keep the money. You can keep it. Uh what if
I'll take the money.
All right, well then I'll keep the idea myself and I won't share it. Sorry
Oh,
everyone.
no, do it.
Tom wants the
Go
money.
for it. You,
Nope.
you share your idea and then I get the money.
Okay. If you use this idea, Tom gets the money.
Yeah, 10%.
Okay, so uh my idea is if you had like a almost like a social media platform where you could do car hands but like digitally with other drivers and you can rate your racing experience with those drivers. So if you had a really good experience with that driver, then you can rate them high in like whatever. You could have like different categories or whatever. It's like almost like a seller review of like your
Yeah.
race with those people. And that might encourage people to race where they because you don't want to get a shit review. Hmm?
Dude, this is giving me, have you seen Black Mirror?
Oh, is this Black Mirror vibes for you?
Yeah, if you haven't seen this episode of Black Mirror, I don't want to ruin it, but the premise, episode 1 of season 3, I believe, is that every interaction you have, you can rate the person after the interaction is done, and society is organized based on people's ratings.
Mm, I
And
like this
it
idea.
is dark.
I
It is
like this
dark.
idea.
It is not a positive thing.
But okay, hold
um,
on, hold on. All right, hold on. We're going down a rabbit hole for a second here. Yeah,
no, but this is exactly what I wanted to talk about. Go for it. Yeah.
Ivan Munoz says that's basically China. But listen here. Look, we talk about I don't want people to think I'm a communist or anything, but look, we talk about instantaneous feedback and trying to be like the best version of yourself all the time, right? So, I feel like the guy with the red yarn with the poster board right now, like behind me. Um,
Yeah.
so what if you had instantaneous feedback on how you are to interact with people all around you all the time? What if your instantaneous feedback was, wouldn't let me get a word in, talked over me, interrupted me too much? You'd be like, God damn it. I don't want to do that because I don't want people to interact with me in that way. But like you might never get that feedback any other way. So then you get that instantaneous feedback. Everyone would be more enjoyable to be around because people would have the instantaneous feedback to be the most enjoyable person or effective or whatever you're aiming for person like a societal group.
You trying to tell me something?
No,
Interrupted me, talked over me.
no,
No, I'm kidding.
I'm the one that interrupts on accident.
No, we both. I think we were pretty good about that, but we both offend. I was going to say though, I see where you're going. What I wanted to talk about, and I messaged you this, that I think this is a potentially taboo, or like I don't know how this will come off necessarily, but I love the idea of like positive accountability, and that's kind of what you're talking about when it comes to like sharing the racetrack with people. Specifically, this is how I'm thinking of it from this weekend. How could I, for example, this car that I thought was like genuinely a danger to be on track with that ended up hitting the ASM car. What is there other than there? It's somebody's job to hold them accountable. Obviously, that's a totally different conversation. There's a race director, there's people, there's like a system in place. But there are times that there are all sorts of times where you want to follow up to somebody after an on track interaction and either give them a positive or a negative, like uh, review like you're talking about basically. But what I believe should be leaned into more with motorsports is like an air of positive accountability where it is okay to give somebody, especially towards the negative side of feedback, but it should be positively framed in a way that makes people better. And it just because you're getting feedback like that doesn't make you a bad person. Like it's not a reflection on your character, it's not a reflection on your like your worth. It's a uh it's a reflection, not a reflection, it's an opportunity to be better. And I think that motorsports is so type A and so pride driven, especially with because it's dominated by men. Anytime you get sort of feedback that's negative, it's immediately like confrontational and it's immediately like not necessarily handled the best. So that's what I was messaging you about, like, hey, I think we could talk about this, but we have to frame it carefully because it's kind of a weird thing to talk about. It's not really like a competition thing, but it kind of is, because how do you give your competitors this positive critique, positive accountability that they're like you're telling them that they're doing something you're uncomfortable with, but it makes you and them both better. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, no, I totally get what you're saying, and honestly, this whole idea and conversation could go beyond just racing, but like, how do you give people criticism when you feel like they would really benefit from it, right? Like in general,
It's
in the workplace, like it could be your friends. Like, how do you go about criticizing somebody in the benefit of them, like constructively? How do you offer that constructive criticism where it
yeah,
won't be confrontational? In a racetrack sense, I feel like there's first you got to make sure there's no adrenaline. It's got to be like
yeah,
well after. I would like to think I'm pretty open minded, and if it's immediately after a race and somebody's accusing me of something, I'll instantly defend it, even if I'm terribly wrong, because the adrenaline's going. I'm just an idiot. I can't stop it. Like
right.
it's my monkey brain being taken over by adrenaline, and yeah, it's just like you can't tell me I'm wrong in that instant, but like you give me a half hour and I'll say sorry and that I'm a doofus.
Right. I mean, part of the reason I think this is a little tricky to talk about is because like I know for 100% sure the same. I'm not the most graceful with this, especially if it's close to the time that I was in the car. Like if I'm feeling passionate and I'm all spun up and stuff. There have totally been times I can think of times in GLTC where I would have an on-track interaction. Somebody would come up before I was quite ready for it, and they would say like, "Hey, I'm sorry," or something would come up, and I'm like, I wouldn't handle it good. Well, I wouldn't handle it well. But I feel like if all of us were trying better, trying harder to be better about that and like be positive with making each other better by holding each other accountable. Like it's not even constructive criticism, I think it's accountability. Then all of us are going to get better, but it's really really hard to do, I guess. Partially also maybe because it's not our job to critique each other.
No,
Like it's
yeah,
the race director's job and
it's
enforce it and
not,
stuff. I
but
don't
yeah. So like maybe in the racing sense, like I'm trying to think of like turning this like into like a corporate work environment. If you're having like a problem with your coworker, you might be able to talk to them, and then if it seems like that conversation's not going to be received well at all, then you just abort, and then maybe you go talk to like a shared manager or something, so they like that channel of information. So like if you're having a problem with a racer, like, and you just like, you know what? I don't see this conversation going well at all. If anything, it's just going to put up walls, and it's going to be like, it's going to be deconstructive rather than constructive. Then maybe that's when like you get the race director or the leadership of the series involved, to try to help whatever the issue is, right? I want to read a Brandon Anderson chat GPT thing.
uh,
Says,
okay, go for it.
so the writing prompt to Chat GPT, which is a chat bot if you're living under a rock, it goes, he Brandon says, positively rewrite this feedback. Hey jackass, you're an awful driver and very unsafe on track. You need to have a way better spatial awareness. And then so this is Chat GPT's like response to it. It says, hey, it's important to prioritize safety and awareness on the track. Improving your spatial awareness could really enhance your driving skills and ensure a safer environment for everyone. Let's work on this together.
Oh, I'm getting so much corporate ick. Like, dude, whoever that chat GPT bot, it's totally Office Space. He's leaned up on the thing. He's got his coffee mug and he goes, "Hey, let's try to do this together." And then he walks away and you have to do it on your own. That's
Yep,
what that is.
yep, that's what that is.
um, yeah, I guess like this isn't something I meant to bring up this week. So we haven't fully like vetted this with like ideas of how to make it better. But I really wish for myself and everybody else, especially myself, that I was better at giving and receiving constructive accountability. Like when I'm told I'm wrong, I'm probably the first one to be like, "Nuh-uh," if I don't believe it. But then you think about it afterward. Maybe it is a little bit. I know you're good at this. You think it's whether it's productive to bring it up in the moment and you make your point in the moment. Maybe it makes them think about it a little bit.
Hmm.
I think that's useful.
I
But I'm thinking through like for this Mustang, for example, like I never felt annoyed at this Mustang, but both of us ended up tripping over each other a little bit on the race for like 20 minutes because he didn't have a gear and I'm in a slower car. Like how maybe this is a bad example, but after that, if it had gone more negatively, you could go up to the person and say like, "Hey, like I was in the Porsche and I was like in your way, and then there were times where you were in my way, and like maybe you talk through like how you could do it better. Like, hey, if you had let me like give you just a little bit of a gap in this one section of track, then you wouldn't have caught me here, which means we both would have run nose to tail for the rest of the time instead of tripping over each other for the next 10 laps." Like you go to a like non-accusatory solution based conversation that's like,
yeah.
if this thing, but then at the same time I didn't lift, I didn't do it either, so
Right, that's
like,
what I was gonna say. Like, what if he was like, "Yeah, I totally get what you're saying, but also if you just sat behind me in this one section, then we wouldn't have been tripping on each other either." And then you're like, "Crap, we're racing."
yeah.
Like, what do I do about that?
Yeah, I mean, maybe there's no good solution to this problem, but I still wish that there was a culture of like that positive feedback that like, hey, that wasn't what you're supposed to be doing, or that wasn't. The Mustang's a bad example because it's not like he was doing anything wrong. But I'm sure everyone listening can think of like a time if you've done wheel to wheel or track days, or you're sharing a space with other people, they're doing something they're not supposed to do that negatively impacts the experience for you or others. And then there's like somehow no accountability for it. You're just like, how do we get to that place?
have you
without
ever
going and making that person feel bad or seeming like you're a dick.
I don't know if that's possible, but I like at least with like 100% batting rate, right? Because
Well, yeah.
have you ever been kind of like not like completely fired up, but like you go up to somebody and you're like, "Hey dude, like when you did this, like it affected me in this way, like that wasn't cool." And then you're kind of expecting like almost like some confrontation back or something like that. And then they diffuse it completely. They go, "Oh, dude, look, I'm so sorry that that happened. Like, you want to watch the video and we can like go through it?" They instantly diffused it. You're like, "Oh crap. All right. Well, I like can't be an asshole. This guy was just like super, super cool or whatever like that." We should try to be that guy more often, right? Where we are the diffusers, and you're good at this, Tom. You're a good diffuser of like a
If I'm
situation.
not involved.
Uh
Like I'm a
yeah,
good
because
mediator. I'm never going to claim on a microphone that I'm like a calm, cool, collected person if I'm an uninvolved party.
yeah, that's true. Okay, because
Because
well,
I
because if you feel attacked, then you have like a defense mechanism. But what I'm saying is that that defense mechanism gets in our way a lot of like of getting constructive feedback, right? I know for a
yeah,
fact that like I'm guilty of that. Like I have a natural defense mechanism when somebody and it's just a change of tone. Like and it works both ways. Like if you want to give somebody constructive feedback, then you need to really be you need to really have your tone checked so they don't have their defense mechanism triggered because it happens without thinking about it, right? So,
yeah,
and I think you need if you're getting constructive feedback, you're going to feel that defense trigger, but then realize if you let that defense mechanism come into play, you might actually be missing out on some constructive feedback. So like you just need to suppress it for the moment. Maybe it needs to come out. Maybe that defense mechanism should have came out. You need to blast that fool. But it I think like if you get and it's going to be a practice skill over time.
for sure.
It's like you feel that defense mechanism coming out and then you're like, "Whoa, whoa, whoa. Hold on, like animal brain of mine, like just relax a little bit. We're not in danger. Like we're cool. Everything's good. Like let's have a conversation." Then I think like those moments that you wish would happen more often will happen more often. Uh but it takes like both parties because there's like a certain if somebody comes up just like freaking coming out of the gate like yelling at you, then obviously you're gonna have a defense mechanism. There's no like way you're gonna be like, "Whoa, man, everything's cool. Like, let's watch the video." You're gonna be like it's gonna turn into a fight, right? Like, "Grr."
Right.
um, so like we
And
can,
you heard it here first on the Animal Brains podcast.
yeah, we're going, guys. There's not that many reptiles, but there's a lot of different animals in this world. The Animal Brains podcast. Oh, I lost the air horn. There it is. You did a monkey noise.
Yeah. I don't know.
I wish I didn't play that over so I could clip that so we have a monkey Tom noise in the future.
I'll try to recreate it someday. I have my windows open. I'm hoping there's no one in the parking lot that just like heard that from the third floor.
They're like, "There's a monkey in that apartment."
Yeah. Hey, this is a pet friendly one. No monkeys. I cut you off like we were talking about finishing your thought. Sorry.
Oh, no, I mean, I feel like my thought was basically over, but yeah, I think it takes both from the offering constructive feedback and then getting constructive feedback. I think the reason why that interaction going well is so rare is that it takes both parties to like come into it correctly. Uh,
Yeah.
and for me, um, I haven't really thought about it honestly that much until this conversation, but I'm going to try to, if I feel that defense mechanism coming into play, I will recognize what it is and then like just tell it to chill out for 5 minutes at least. And then if I still feel attacked in 5 minutes, then I can bring it out, right? But I will let myself be vulnerable for those 5 minutes during that somebody trying to give me constructive feedback or maybe even just bitching and there's still something to learn about it. Maybe it's not even constructive feedback, maybe it's just feedback,
Oh,
right? So, but
yeah.
but lower the defense mechanism so like you can take that feedback, which might actually be useful even if you have to read between the lines, and then learn something from it. And then something else that you were talking about, Tom, where sometimes you'll offer constructive feedback or confront somebody on something, and they will fight you on it. So you'll come away from that conversation thinking, "Oh man, that was a waste of time, waste of effort, whatever." But I think what happens a lot of times in those conversations is they might fight you on it because their defense mechanism triggered. So you could have done a better job approaching it, and they could have done a better job suppressing that defense mechanism. So they'll fight you instinctively, but they do hear you, and they will listen to the feedback. They just need to marinate on it a little bit. Like I think a lot of times when that defense mechanism comes out, it will seem like they weren't listening or they don't get it or they still think they're right or whatever. Uh, but at least in my own experience, my defense mechanism might come out and I might I might find myself like defending myself, but then the conversation's over and then I'm reflecting on that conversation and then realize, you know what, there was some truth to when they said this or that, or I could have played that better in this regard. And you're like critiquing yourself. Like, I mean, how often do you have a conversation and you're thinking about the conversation afterwards and why did I say that dumb thing or whatever? You know what I mean? I feel like it's a very normal thing to have a conversation and then think about
Yeah,
the conversation immediately afterwards, right?
dude. Every time I re-listen to our podcast, and that's not even exactly your point, but yeah, obviously that you do that all the time. I actually think I was just realized like we have a goal to get our friend Ed Colazzo, Ed CZ, on this podcast sometime to talk about because he's in my opinion like the best lead instructor slash novice instructor person in the country,
The best.
and he's a master of this sort of um,
Diffusal.
diffusing the defense mechanism while communicating the point. So
Yes.
we need to have him on, and we need to ask him about this in the other stuff we want to ask him about too, because you can watch. The other person I'm thinking of right now is my dad, which this is a little different, but like at the go-kart track, we would get customers coming through, and if my dad was on duty in the building, he was usually out of the building doing like business development stuff, but every once in a while he'd have a shift as a manager. He'd get a customer upset, they'd walk up and they'd be complaining and like they'd yell at him or they'd be mad about it and they were like they just wanted to get it out. They needed to complain to feel better. And partially because I think he was in his 50s and like an older guy, he like claims it himself. It's like old guy power. He could just be like, "Do you okay? Like, do you want to complain to me or do you want me to offer you a solution?" He would literally say that to people, and they'd be like, "Oh, okay, yeah, solution would be good." And then he would like fix their problem. But yeah, that defense mechanism slash need to like get your emotion out is part of it too. Like you have to, and like you said, it's a learned thing. It's like you have to
It's practiced.
practice reaction and uh, and managing that and being aware of yourself as it's happening. See yourself through the fourth wall and be like,
Which
"Uh oh, it's happening.
which is
Bring it back
definitely
in. Bring it back in."
yeah, yep, which is definitely easier said than done. Like I'm a pretty emotional person, so like it's hard to reel like that stuff in. Like when I get all worked up about something, like I'm just I'm a little bit of a lunatic. Like that's it's
Yeah,
hard to reel it in. Uh, David Bast in the chat had a really cool comment. He said, "It's easier to start nice and confirm you're angry later, but much harder to start angry and then realize you should apologize and walk it back."
sure. Well, yeah, because then you got two offenses to figure out instead of one.
Seriously.
Like, yeah. Anyway, an interesting topic that I was thinking about, not because of anything specific, but just in like this grand scope of this 3 hours on a racetrack that was like kind of the most chaotic wheel to wheel I've had in a little while. I'm like, man, what is there isn't one, but if there was like an alternate reality where there was this like positive accountability where no one felt bad for getting feedback, but everybody got their feedback, what would that look like? How would you even begin that? Like it was something I spent time thinking about after that stint.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a interesting it's a it it's a interesting issue. It's like almost a little related to like the Dunning-Kruger conversation where it's
Sure.
like somebody already has an idea and then how do you and they're adhered to that idea, how do you communicate them into a way where they let go of that like preconceived thought or idea or like basically just the like people are very easy to be set in their ways. And I feel like order for us to be like the absolute best humans that we can, we have to try to realize when we're being set in our ways. And that's definitely easier said than done.
Yeah, and the last like the layer of it that I couldn't stop thinking about is like no one likes to feel bad. You don't want to make people feel bad, and inherently being given feedback, especially when it's about something that you should fix in behavior, no matter what it is, makes you feel bad.
Yeah.
Like how if you could pull that out, like you pull that ingredient out of the mixture, then everything's good. Anyway, it was an interesting little brain worm that was in my head. Should we do some emails? Do you have any more thoughts on that? We have emails stacked up pretty good.
Do you want to pull up the emails? Because I forgot to bring that up.
I got it.
Okay. I have the wrong Gmail account up. So you pull it up and I will finish pulling it up on my end.
Gotcha. While he's pulling that up, if you have any thoughts on that kind of stuff, we'd love to hear about it, or any sort of like tools. Neither of us went to school for any stuff like this, but it's like, that's a big psychology, sociology, personal relationship topic there. So be curious.
All right.
Find it?
I am in the email thread. There is a lot of emails in here. Which one are you looking at? Do you want to read the first one?
I'm going to start with Jay, but you want to do the thing first?
Oh, of course. Of course, Tom O'Gorman. Hold on. Emails.
And it's been 2 weeks.
Oof. That's too long. That's too long.
I haven't heard that in a while.
We got to jump into some emails here. Do this one from the one on the bottom there from January 15th. Are we not doing that one?
Well, it's a video.
Oh, gotcha.
So our friend Tim sent us a video that's like, roast me. Here's something I did, and sent us a link. So we can't really do that on the podcast yet. We are on video though. So if you are listening to this on audio, we have a YouTube channel that is the Lizard Brains Network. There's a link in the description. You can subscribe to our channel and you can see our pretty faces while we're listening. And also you can email us at podcast@lizardbrain.life or join our Discord server, listen to us live, and send us questions on there. But I was going to start with Jay's David Bowie.
Yep, that makes sense after I figured out what Tim's was.
All right, so this is from Jay DeVries, who emailed us at the end of January. The title is David Bowie. First off, before I get to my question, I love the podcast. I love the positivity of it. I have a habit of being overly critical on myself, and listening to the Mind Traps episode really was a look in the mirror moment. I've actually listened to that specific episode a couple times now, as it is a much wider reach than just automotive. I work in a very competitive field, and I also do personal training and coaching for wrestling. And the thoughts and ideas in that episode have made me think differently about my thought processes at work as well as coaching. Love the podcast. It is both entertaining and helps people grow. Keep it up.
Dude, that's super cool.
Bro, that's super cool. Also kind of wild. Like, we're not really qualified to talk about stuff like that, but if it's like we end up being helpful sometimes, that's cool.
I think even if like look, if 90% of the podcast is absolutely worthless, maybe there's 10% that's useful to somebody. That's freaking cool.
Yeah, it is. All right, now on to my question. At this point, I'm wondering if I should just change my name to David Bowie on iRacing. I've got a mid-pack driver on iRacing for so long, but I've recently been starting to really focus and work intently on my pace. It's starting to pay off, and I'm finding myself higher up the field, but that itself has brought along a whole new host of problems. The biggest problem is feeling like David Bowie on track, very under pressure. That was well played.
I'm not getting any of these jokes because I thought David Bowie was a restaurant or something.
Oh my God. Okay, David Bowie's a singer. He has a song called Under Pressure. You've heard it for sure.
Okay, I probably heard it, but
yeah. Dun 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 dun. Under pressure.
Yep. Okay. Yep. Thanks, Tom. Thanks. Now
right,
we're
so the biggest problem.
We're getting copyright hit on YouTube now because that was so perfect. But go on.
Thank you. Okay, so I'm feeling under pressure. I feel like I get a good grid spot, I get a good start, and then instead of looking forward, I spend the rest of the race worried about not getting caught by the drivers behind me. And towards the end of the race, as people are on my tail, I absolutely crumble. How do I do better under pressure when people are right behind me and keep myself running the laps that I know I can run instead of falling apart? Do I need to be in that position more, and will I get used to it, or is there some way I can train my brain or some thought process that I can use to keep myself moving forward and not falling back? Thanks again, guys. Jay DeVries, the livery guy. Oh, Jay did deliveries on some of DJ's iRacing cars, and
Dude,
they're very good.
they're so good. Yeah, if you need an iRacing livery or literally probably even a real life livery or just some ideas or whatever, Jay is like he's an artist. He's good.
Yes. That's a good question. I actually want to share that I struggle with this. I think I'm not necessarily the strongest mentally with scenarios where I'm feeling under pressure. Like even in the car, whether it's a sim or it's real life. Like if I start to get the little nick in the armor that I'm on the back foot, I'm really not super great at that. So I think I kind of just want to say like, yeah, same. So this is definitely something that a lot of us struggle with, even if you're been in it longer, I guess. I'm assuming I've been in it longer for at least sim racing. But I think obviously well, you go first. You share your thoughts first. I read it.
Yeah. I think so. The part of the email that stuck out to me is the part where he's talking about uh I'm trying to find the exact spot. He says but he the race starts and he's focused, he's like thinking about the drivers behind him. I think that is like you have to distract your brain. You have to be so enveloped in the task of what you're doing and the execution of like lap to lap, corner to corner, that you're not thinking about the what ifs of what might be happening behind you, or what if that person catches me and then what? Like, what's the problem if that happens? What, you get to race them? It's not that bad, right? Like, so like,
Yeah.
don't work yourself into a frenzy because that like person's catching you or whatever. Like, that's cool. You get to race them. You know what I think to myself when somebody's catching me? I'm like, I'm gonna make them work for it. Like, they might be faster than me, but I'm gonna make them work for it, right? Because there's a chance that they might have a mistake because they're having to work for it, right? And then when it comes to passing me, as long as it's not like affecting my race, like in the long term, so like obviously if I'm gonna lose a bunch of seconds fighting this person and that's gonna affect my potential finishing position farther back, then I'll probably just, okay, you got me, and then just like let them go. Um,
Yeah.
but if it's like this is for this position, then like we're gonna race it out. And when we're side by side, hopefully I do a better job. But the thing that I would focus on when I said like envelop yourself in the task is you got to focus on the references. You got to focus on the stuff that made you qualify where you did. Like, where am I braking? Where am I turning? Like what? Okay, how is the tires in the car changing? How is the track changing? What's happening in front of me? What's happening behind me? Is that if I is that guy behind the guy that's catching me catching him? Because then if I can just hold them off for like a couple more laps and just like really executing these laps and they start fighting, or if it's like, okay, if I keep it the same, like if that guy behind me is catching me, then the guy behind that guy might be like, well, we're catching the guy in front. I'm not going to fight him now, right? Like, so there's all these things going together. But what I would mostly focus on is the task of driving the car and extracting its fullest performance that you at the moment are capable of. And that's all you can do. If you focus on what you're capable of in that moment rather than what you're not capable of, you're going to have like a much better time. And if that person catches you because they were doing a better job, cool. Well, now they're in front of you. You get to learn some stuff from them. Not a big deal. You get a chance to get better. You figure out where they were going faster than you. Hopefully you figure it out fast enough where now you can fight them. Like
Yeah.
that's the benefit. It's like, oh, hey, that person knows something that I don't. If you can figure it out while they're still behind you, that's extra cool. But a lot of times it's way easier to figure out where somebody's faster than you when they're in front of you.
It's interesting. The first thing I thought of was actually this wasn't really his point, I don't think, but the first thing I thought of was like the anonymity of like if I change my name, it'll feel a little different. Maybe that wasn't the point, but that reminds me of something we talked about I think 2 weeks ago, where it's like if you can, like me personally, I don't like looking foolish in front of people or like I don't know what I'm doing. So I don't. Maybe that wasn't his point, but if it was, that's a little different because you like maybe it's just more practice. But I agree with the reference points. I also think this is something specifically with the simulator I really struggle with, and this was like a COVID thing. COVID when we were like racing 5, 6, 7 days a week, like on real races that people were like
Like
competing for, and it was
broadcasted
like
and
live
yep,
streamed and all this.
yep, yep.
Yeah, I would literally what he's talking about. I would feel pretty comfortable. I would practice a lot. I would do an okay job in qualifying. And then as soon as the race would start, I think this is a universal sim racing thing. People get tense. People get nervous. Like they struggle with this like comfort because like it feels so real. Like you're probably in the minority of people who don't get uncomfortable in the races during a sim race
No, I
because
definitely
you're
do.
like,
I definitely do.
do you get more nervous for a sim race than a
Oh,
real race?
absolutely. Way more nervous for a sim race than I do a real
You
race.
do,
Yeah, yeah. And
even
like
still.
my physiological, that's like physical, right? Did I use that word right?
Yeah,
Um,
sure.
response is my elbows get tight.
So that's what I was gonna say. I noticed and I fixed this and I try to fix it as quickly as I can. I hold my breath. Like and this sounds insane because this is like stuff that I would be like 10 years ago for a road race thing. I'd be like, what? That sounds
I used to
crazy.
hold
Like
my
I've never had
breath
that problem with real life.
when I first started autocrossing. I'd get done with the run and be out of breath, and I'm like, "Well, I'm out of breath." And then at some point, I realized, "Oh, I'm holding my breath during the autocross run. What am I doing? Like, how am I gonna execute my best when I'm starving my brain of oxygen?"
Exactly. So if I'm feeling pressure and I'm feeling like I'm like not in control and I feel notchy and I feel myself being tense, the first thing I need to do is like take deep breaths down
Yep.
straightaways and remember myself to like and then if you're like even further than that, like release your hand on the wheel, like loosen your grip. It sounds so basic, but I swear it like helped me with this like nerves thing. The hardest part also with the simulator, because this is the context of this email, is there's the little thing in the window that tells you exactly how far away the car is behind you in real time.
Yeah.
It's not just a visual, it's
Yep.
literally a number, and you can see every time they chip away a little tenth
A
on you. And
little
it's
bit here, a little bit there.
the worst for your mental like focus. So if you can like I think like I still struggle with it. I don't feel like I can just like authoritatively fix it for you, but if you can identify whether you can take breaths, let go of the wheel, try even if you like if you're settled into a race, like turn that little screen off, like change it to the F2 screen instead of the F3 screen so it's not a relative, it's a just a running order and focus on your marks and like be aware of them behind you, but don't let the little number and the little car in your mirror like pick at your brain and put chinks in your armor because the to DJ's point, first of all, if they catch you, what's the big deal? First of all, it's a simulator, it doesn't really matter. Second of all, you get to have a fun race. But also, like I've been working on becoming more comfortable with like what if they catch me, they caught me. Good for them. You know, like I'm still it's way worse for me to get clammed up and tense and drive worse than it is they're gonna catch me faster. Like
Yep.
there's nothing I can do about that.
Right. I think that's the
So
thing you have to recognize is
what, that they're gonna catch me
they're
faster?
gonna catch you faster if you're like thinking about it too much. But yeah, so the breathing thing, I forgot that part. But yes, absolutely. So like when I feel that physiological response, my
Hmm.
solution for it is to breathe. And just like really big deep breaths, however many breaths is it requires, I'm doing. So uh, the one time I felt like that in real life was my second GLTC win when Tom was right behind me and I could see dude, there's this thing called Tom eyes and you freaking see him and it's just the eyebrows are like angled in and you just see him. Tom has like the most focus ever and you just like I look in my rearview mirror and all I see literally nothing else. I just see Tom's eyes. And uh, it's very, very intimidating. Uh, when you see this person behind you and you see it in their freaking eyes that they want to win so bad. But problem is I also want to win really bad. So I felt in that race, Tom, I felt that physiological response coming in real life. But because of my experience in sim racing and how to deal with that physical response, which my solution was to breathe and, like you said, like concentrate on your hands on the wheel, focus on the references, the marks, just hit your marks, get in that rhythm and make sure, and you take care of the physical responses with the breathing, with the concentrating on your hands. And then you take care of the driving bit of it by concentrating on your references. That like I would do that in sim racing, and then I started to feel like that in real life. Used the things I learned in sim racing to help me with that specific moment, and like the breathing, hands, focusing on references, like that's what allowed me to essentially do the rest of that race mistake free. Do you remember me making any mistakes in that race? Because if I made any, you were going to get past me. Any, because you
Yeah,
were
and I
mistake
was
free. You were mistake free as well.
right. And on the flip side of this whole thing is like when you know you have the upper hand on somebody, it's the most invincible feeling in the world. And like in that race, and there are plenty of times where if you know you have the upper hand, like I knew I had the upper hand on you. I knew I was the faster car. The only thing against me was the length of the race and whether or not you made a mistake, and you did not.
Well, and so also in that race, I realized that you were never going to pass me on the back straight because my car was just more slippery
Sure.
than yours. So as long as if I just executed everything else well and just got a good run out of keyhole, so I had to get a good run out of turn one, so you didn't have an opportunity to interrupt keyhole for me, and then I got a good run out of keyhole. I was good. You could be as close as you wanted everywhere else. They're really like, unless you were really forcing the issue and I slipped up even a little bit, like maybe you could have made something work. But as long as I executed on those two things, then it did feel like I was in control. And that's something that you kind of understand that like based on the racetrack, right? So there was
Totally.
that like comfort in there as well. So yeah, I guess like to take away Jay, understand where you're stronger on track and how that might benefit you or harm you. So you understand the situation. Breathe to get rid of the physiological responses and to run the fastest laps possible. Do your best to not focus on the gap behind you, unless you can notice, oh, they keep catching me in this section. Might be leaving some time there. Try to pay attention to what they're doing differently than you, and then maybe try to apply that in the next lap. Very hard to do when they're behind you, but not impossible. And then focus on references and just your feeling of the car to just maximize whatever laps you're doing to make their life as tough as it needs to be.
When you find yourself, when you talked about holding your breath, have you ever noticed if it's an inhale or an exhale that you live on? You thought about that?
I think it's just in the middle. I just stop breathing. It's wherever I am when the run starts. It's like I'm breathing, and then the starter goes. This is how it used to be. This is not how it is anymore. But like over the years, you become much more in tune with the vessel of your competition, which is your body. So, uh, the the starter would say go, and I would just leave the line, and wherever my breath was in that's where my breathing would stop.
Gotcha. In the sim, I live on the exhale, which means there's like no oxygen in my body, and I'm just sitting there with nothing. And then I remember like, oh yeah, and then I'm better. You know,
What makes you think that? Are you just like, oh, I need to breathe?
I noticed during COVID that when I would get uncomfortable, dude, I mean, it was like I noticed it in the IMSA Pro Series. There was a day that I qualified on pole. I was the fastest car, and I crashed on lap one because I was uncomfortable with the guy behind me. And I was like, that was the most embarrassing thing I've ever done in my life.
I remember
Of
watching
course,
that
that day
race.
felt so amplified. Yeah. Uh, and I remember realizing like I was sitting there on the exhale, just like with no air in my body, not breathing, doing nothing, like just taking the smallest little breaths to keep myself alive.
You crashed on turn
And if
6,
I had
right?
just gone like, yeah, thanks for remembering.
Yep. But that's about how long you made it until your brain was like, "Need oxygen."
Yep, yep. If I had just breathed down the back straight, you know. So I don't know. I
Yeah.
hope some of that helps, Jay.
I th
But
I
yeah,
think I
I
think
mean,
some of
we
that
all
would be
struggle with
useful.
that.
All right.
Do what?
I said I think some of that would be useful. We've kinda talked about some of that
Yeah.
stuff before, but honestly, like, all that stuff is I think that stuff's really useful, and that I think that's, uh, part of the value of having experience is that you've went through that and you like Tom and I have mostly figured out the response to that scenario. It's always going to be uncomfortable, but you just have to get comfortable being uncomfortable.
Yeah.
All right, we have this email from Taylor Wargo. The subject of it is sucks to suck. Hey
Nerd.
guys, sorry for the long rant question. I just think some context may be important. Hope it reads decently. Me too, Taylor, but I'm reading it, so fat chance. um, I got my first console at 10 years old and played Gran Turismo 2 religiously. I started autocross in 2018 and have enough pace now to be considered quote unquote quick. I got a sim in November of 2023 and have put a reasonable I've put in reasonable and regular practice and have generally fallen short of my goals. My first round of goals were to not care about iRating or licenses, but rather avoid having dumb errors. Taylor, I don't think that's a good goal, but we'll talk about it in a second. Uh, I have low/no incidents most of the time and feel confident and comfortable in any car. Clean, consistent, comfortable. I thought that my history in video game simulators, granted on a controller, plus my history of driving in real life, would be a cocktail for success in iRacing regarding my immediate goals. So that I could add pace and attack off of a good foundation later. Quickly, I learned that the lack of feel, in quotations, in iRacing was going to be a big challenge. I have no comfort or feel in most cars and seem to only sort of drive the Miata okay. I have tried the Merc and Cayman GT4, and I'm truly hot garbage currently. The GT, the 911 GT3R is simply infuriating. That's a tough car. I'm lucky to surpass my MX5 times in most tracks. All right, it's not that tough.
Damn, roasted.
Sorry, Taylor. I know there's so much low hanging fruit. I need to have a click. Oh God, Taylor, my reading's falling apart. It's not your email. I know there is so much low hanging fruit that I need to click that I've been reluctant to splurge on setups and nonsense that only mask my fundamental errors. I just don't have any feeling or confidence yet. He adds the yet in there. Thank you. I appreciate that. I'm simply trying to survive the tool and have a hard time enjoying it and the process currently. I see ways it is helping or might help IRL, so ultimately it's doing the primary job. I feel like I'm back to square one. Otherwise, how do I learn/gain/notice the feel so I can drive clean, consistent, and comfortable? So,
I got one first.
okay, Tom, what's Tom's hot sim take?
Taylor, it sounds like you need some DJ coaching.
Okay.
Bow, 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 bow.
Bow, bow, bow. Applause button. Honestly, it sounds to me, Taylor, like your settings are not where they need to be. And the frame that you're
He doesn't mean
chasing,
car setup. He means your literal computer
yeah,
setup.
literal computer, FOV, screen setup, something like graphics, the wheel settings, all that comes into play. You could have like the seating position weird, something. The pedals could be weird. A lot of people forget to turn on the click a box when they have a load cell pedal in iRacing. So then the pedal reacts differently if you don't click that box, and that creates like a huge disconnect for a lot of people. Honestly, Taylor, not to sell like my side hustle, but like we should probably look at your settings. But the the thing that I had a problem with was one of your goals was to have to avoid dumb errors. I think that makes you too cautious. You're not using the sim to like the fullest amount of its ability, which is a reset button. Like make the dumb errors, experiment, try new things, like crash the car. It's part of like what makes the sim like such a good learning tool because you get that instantaneous feedback when you're flying off the racetrack. Like, but there's no consequences to it.
That all hits different after last week's Gran Turismo roast.
There's a reset
Sorry, go
button.
ahead. Yeah.
But like, don't avoid the dumb errors because each one of those errors is a thing to learn. Uh, You know how many times I've like jumped on grid with quali fuel in the car and I like run out of gas in the car? Well, I've done it a couple times. Each time I feel like an idiot, but I learn from it, right? Like you won't do that for a while at least, hopefully. I did it like 3 months ago, but I didn't do it before that for like 2 or 3 years. But like, you'll make a dumb error, watch the replay, learn from it. Try to watch because a lot of these dumb errors like start involving other people. Try to watch it and see if there was a way you could have not crashed. Like if there was a way you could have driven that, or if there was something you could have noticed, like if you noticed just one example, but there's going to be a million of them. But if you notice that like somebody's not placing their car very well, maybe you don't trust them right next to you, right? Maybe you pester them into a mistake and then you just drive right on by them. Maybe that's the proper way to pass that person rather than trusting the person who's been a half a car width off on where he should be placing or where they should be placing the car over and over again. Maybe don't trust that that person's going to be accurate within a half a car length next to you, right? So like those are like takeaways that you can have. There's a lot of different things that you can take away, but like avoiding the quote unquote dumb errors is robbing yourself of learning possibilities. You should be pushing to the limit of what your own capabilities are on the edge of your comfort zone because that's where you're going to learn the most and that's where you're going to actually improve the best.
Yeah. I Taylor, I'll share my experience because it's really, I think, pretty applicable to you. I also struggle with the quote unquote feel, and it's something I'm frustrated with forever and embarrassed of a little because I learned to drive on simulators pre iRacing. Like this is all stuff that should be within my wheelhouse and made me who I am. And now when I try to get on the sim now with iRacing, it makes me feel like a fool sometimes, a lot of the time. So something that helped me, I kind of reignited that in 2019, and then it really got amplified in 2020 because of COVID. So some things that helped me, I struggle with the sensation of speed and I struggle with the feel through the steering wheel a lot. And basically I would build my lap time around muscle memory. I would have to like kind of drive and drive and drive and drive and drive until I had the muscle memory in my brain so down. And if I had to deviate from it, it was like a big risk because I didn't actually feel the car very well. And I still struggle with that to the point that there are cars that I will not drive on the simulator. So maybe that's not that helpful, but some of the things that I became more hyper aware of, a practical note that I would say is I turn the engine noise down, I turn the tire noise up. That could help because if you're not hearing the tire, the iRacing, all of the games are going to have a tire noise that will help you. So that's just a universal kind of sim thing. Um, I watch drivers who are faster than me. I watch the fastest drivers until I get to the point where they're doing stuff that I know I can't do. So if we're in a server, a game where somebody is clearly like esports level, I don't watch them. But if there's somebody that I can kind of watch and I pick up reference points from them that I know I can hit the brakes at these points, I know maybe little sections of track that I can get away with being more risky on, excuse me, or being very safe on with track limits or dropping tires. Um, I used other information than what I was trying to do to keep myself reined in. And I would also practice with the ghost on pretty often just to like always have a speed reference. Because I agree with DJ, there's probably some settings on your computer in the game that you can probably improve, but also no matter what you do, the simulator always feels slow relative to real life.
It
And
does.
people struggle with overdriving and controlling the car because they don't realize how fast their car is traveling in the video game. Uh, there was something else that I forgot, but it must not have been that important because I don't remember it. But um, yeah, I can't remember it. But maybe some of those things will help too. But yeah, I would say reach out to DJ, see what you can figure out. but
I,
but also, I feel you, man. I feel you.
Tom definitely feels you. I think I think the people who get the most from sim racing in terms of a tool that helps them take those skills from real life into the sim and then take the skills and habits that they form in the sim and bring it into real life, those people tend to focus on how iRacing is similar to real life and not different. So if you focus on the ways that it is similar, and not the ways, because it's definitely, I mean, it's it's on the computer. It's not going to be absolutely perfect, but if you focus on the ways that it's very similar to real life, and then you acknowledge that hey, these things, like for me, there's a lot of stuff that I'll do to set lap times that are kind of like esportsy. That's like, okay, like I would never do that in real life and stuff like that. But there's a lot of stuff also that like in the process of that, it's developing a higher resolution on my inputs. Maybe the inputs wouldn't be the same, but I recognize that fidelity and those pathways I'm building in my brain that will help me set that fast time in sim will translate to more control and more fidelity in real life.
Yeah.
So focus on the ways that it's similar. Honestly, reach out to me, Taylor. I believe you're a I I think Taylor's a subscriber. I'm not sure. We're getting to the point where I'm
Yeah.
like losing
He's
track of them.
he's
Uh,
in here.
if you're
Not now, but in
if you're
sometimes.
if you're a Lizard Brain podcast subscriber in the Discord, like you reach out to me at any time, I'm gonna help you for free. Like it's not I don't charge people who subscribe to the podcast. It's obviously I have limited time, so it might be hard to schedule that. But if I am free and you need help, I help you. So Taylor, please reach out. Like we'll figure it out. We can do it via screenshots, then it'll just take longer, or we can hop in Discord and figure it out like I normally would um, for a paying client. Uh, it's there's probably something that we can take away from it that will help you use the sim as a tool that will help you in real life. Ron Bauer asks, forget, did you start iRacing stuff before you started autocross? No, I started autocross and then I started doing iRacing because I wanted to get better at autocross.
I remembered my thing real quick. This probably applies directly because Taylor, you drive in real life. People who drive in real life, me included, we want to be as good as we are in real life in the game. And when we're not, we try too hard. I think at least maybe this is just me, but when I want to be as good as I am, I overdrive. I drive sloppy. The last part, regardless of all the other stuff we've said, is if the value of like literally just slowing down and taking your time to like drive where you know the car needs to be, drive under the limit, like hit marks, like just be willing to be a little bit slower and be a little bit more perfect for the sake of like establishing some fundamentals because like I'll catch myself literally all the time to this day. I will want to be better than I am and then I realize I haven't hit an apex in 2 laps and I'm like locked up in understeering places and stuff. And it's like it's just a compounding error. It's just making me worse and worse and worse and worse and when I take a deep breath and I just like do a quote unquote slow lap, almost every time I end up faster because it just makes you actually drive the car the way the car is telling you need to be driven within the simulator, not uh, not the way you want it to be driven. It's the same as like when I drive a like literally if I would get in a Corvette autocross car and I haven't autocrossed a Corvette in a while and I want it to turn better than it can turn, it's not going to go well. But when I slow it down and I remember that the Corvette can only turn the way it turns and then I just drive it the way it needs to be driven, then it's better. So maybe that's the last note also is think about are you trying way too hard because you know you're better than you are? And it's really annoying that you're not better right now? Possibly,
Yep.
because yeah.
Honestly, that might be it, honestly, Tom, because you have to give yourself time to build that bridge in between real life and sim racing. And once that bridge is formed and it's like a fully fledged like highway road bridge, then that information goes back and forth really fluently. But if that bridge is kind of like not maintained very well and it like kind of like with Tom, like that bridge used to be like the freaking like that bridge was like the Golden Gate Bridge. That thing was huge and beautiful. But then Tom stopped sim racing for a long time, and then that bridge kind of deteriorated a little bit. And then his real life got so much better than he ever was in the sim. And then he tries to put that bridge back, and it's not communicating both sides as well as it used to. You just have to give yourself time to build that bridge. So your real life know-how and skills can transfer into the sim. But then also the sim's really unforgiving in the same sense where it's like you could you, it's so unforgiving that like if just your fundamentals just are a little off, then it might be like a wildly different time than what it could have been. And I think it really focuses it helps you focus on the fundamentals of like references, moving the weight around the edge of the car, like having a nice progressive trail on the brake and all these different things where if you can figure out the pace in the sim, then it will add bandwidth and pace to your real life driving.
Yup.
So okay,
Yup.
yup. I need a yup button. I need more buttons,
Yup.
Tom. We haven't added a button in a while.
Yeah, that's true. Let's next time we're together, we'll add some buttons.
Oh, I like that.
When is that? That's the 2 weeks? What are you doing this weekend?
I'm going to VIR.
Oh, yeah.
What are you doing
You
this
excited?
weekend?
Dude, I'm excited. I'm going to Hedge Hollow Raceway. And we're doing one lap practice this weekend. So
Oh,
you did your one lap practice. I got my one lap practice this week. I got Hedge Hollow Raceway, which is a racetrack in Missouri that almost no one has ever heard of or been to before, for some recon laps on Saturday. And then we're running to High Plains Raceway on Sunday out near Denver, to run the Porsche. And we're also going to do a little tire testing and hang out with Salil. And yeah,
that
I'm
sounds
very
fun.
excited about that. I
Uh,
get to drive a little Porsche again. Dude, this year's Porsche heavy.
it's very Porsche heavy. Me and Tom are big Porsche fans.
Yep. Got it, at least this year.
Yeah.
How you feeling about VIR? Is it what's the weather look like?
I haven't even looked. It doesn't matter. Like I'm still just gonna
You
I'm
gotta
gonna
look it
compete.
up.
Okay, hold on, I'll look it up. I didn't think
Well,
it
if in the
mattered,
future,
but oh well, hold on. We're gonna weather. What town is VIR in?
Alton, Virginia, Alton. Dude, I can tell you
VA.
what town every single racetrack around the country is in. The actual town.
It's like in like fifth grade
Quiz
where you
me.
had to like learn the capitals.
Yeah, I don't know. It's such a useless piece of
Yeah,
information.
yeah. But what town the racetrack is in? Definitely. It's supposed to
Yeah,
rain Saturday, and it looks like it'll be beautiful on Sunday.
cool.
It looks
Good
like
luck.
rain
Have
is
fun.
off and on Saturday. So
Hey, if you're at the track this weekend, either at Hedge Hollow Saturday, High Plains Sunday, or VIR the weekend, come say hi to us.
yeah, please do. Oh, I have a Peter. Uh, put a lizard brain sticker on the back of his car. He
Oh
surprised
yeah?
he
Okay.
surprised me with it.
I love it.
It was so good.
We have a s- I'm excited for our sticker idea. For the cars.
I forgot the.
You'll see
Oh, yeah,
someday.
yeah, 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 yeah. I
Yeah.
hope it happens. Okay. Tom, any closing thoughts?
No, let's go play in the rain.
Yeah, we gotta go play in the rain. I gotta go practice VIR on the wet apparently.
We're gonna play iRaining. Otherwise, and this was fun. Good episode. And you out there listening, remember I love your hair and hope you win.